I'm going to go live now.
We are ready to roll, my friend.
We're rocking and rolling. We're recording. We're live. Monetize Mondays. Now, we had a conversation this morning that we decided to make our topic of the day on what is your value? What are you worth? And it really, one of the things we started going through, what were some of the questions that people were emailing in and asking about, which we may cover some depending upon time. And yet I got an email this weekend from someone that I had a conversation with last week. And the funny thing is, I asked them, how did they hear about me? They said, Tony Robbins was talking about you. And I don't know if Tony Robbins was talking about me or not. However, would you say if Tony Robbins is recommending someone, there's a pretty high value put there, right? So I would think so. I mean, for those of you who don't know, I was Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes' top closer and speaker on, especially doing webinars. And the interesting thing came like the next day on Saturday, the guy sends me an email with a flyer from this international company that says they will build their marketing funnel, they'll write all their copy, they'll do their pages, they'll do SEO, and they'll do it for only $1,000. He said, why would I hire you? And I sort of just sat back there and I almost was laughing, like, seriously, you really just asked that question? And I said, and I was a little bit sarcastic. And I said, well, it's a difference between, I don't know what they're going to do for you. I know what we do for people. And I said, the question is, do you want a hamburger from McDonald's or do you want to go to Chop Steakhouse in Atlanta? Do you want to, it's sort of like that analysis there. I said, so the question is, what do you want in your business? And it really goes down to the mistake that so many people make when they're getting started. And you and I have had this conversation time and again with so many people that, they want to get going. They want to do things the right way. They want to begin with strategy. And yet they know what they know they need to do. And then so many people choose the less expensive option. They go for the cheap option, the way that they can get something launched quicker, faster, cheaper. And yet so many times we hear this over and over again, it fails. I mean, right in the Passionpreneur Movement inner circle, I saw a post this weekend that you saw that I commented on that was, why do people fail? Why do entrepreneurs fail? And there was two things. It was a head game versus a heart. And they have this passion and why they choose to do things. And they become entrepreneurs because there's something in their heart that says to go forward and do it. And yet one of the things that messes people up more than anything is their head and, their value, their belief in themselves. Hey, obstacles happen. You're going to launch. Most people, here's the challenge we see. So many people launch and all of a sudden they don't necessarily get the success they expected right off the bat. Abracadabra, everything's not perfect. And then all of a sudden they start getting very reactive and jumping all over the place, making changes instead of getting very strategic and saying, okay, what worked? Let's look at the positive. What went well? What could we have done differently? What changes do we want to make right now and track and measure and split test the difference and then make another change and then make another change. And when you go about doing things that way, amazing things can happen. So anyway, I think this is a great topic, and I'll let you chime in now.
Yeah, Dave, I think you hit the nail on the head. I was reading Russell Brunson's new book, Expert Secrets, and he talks about how people that pay attention. And one of my daily emails this morning was all about that topic and how back in 2014, when I hired Russell Brunson as my business coach to help me get out of my floundering business that was really just hemorrhaging money and on its way out, I forked over $10,000 to him that I didn't have. But what did that do? It made me accountable. It made me put skin in the game. It made me put my back up against the wall, so to speak, and say, it's not if this works, it's when this works. And I executed and implemented everything that man said, which got me to where I'm at today. Partnerships with you, bigger clients, better clients, more revenues. We increased revenues at Unique Designz over 40% last year based upon, investing in my business and investing in education and investing in our value and our worth, right? And I think that says a lot. The people that invest in themselves and aren't afraid to pay are the ones that truly pay attention and execute and really put in the work that needs to get put in. I mean, things don't happen overnight. And there's a lot of testing. There's a lot of trial and error, like you said. If Russell had $1 for every time he failed when he put a product or service out there, he'd be a multi-millionaire, but it works. All of those trial and errors that he went through got him to where he's at today. So, you get what you pay for. And I don't care what anybody says. It is the truth. And you can go the cheap route. You can pay, or you can pay up front what it's going to actually cost. I mean, I always say this to clients, like, if you think I'm expensive, hire an amateur and see how much that's going to cost you in the long run.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point. And the question I want to pose to everyone who's watching right now is, what are you worth? What is your time worth? What is your brand worth? What is their expertise worth? The other day, I had someone add me as a friend who's part of the ClickFunnels group. And they said, hey, they wanted to meet me at Funnel Hacking and congratulate me on the awards and for, the 222 Comma Club awards. And the question that she asked is, what do you attribute your success to? And I said, I thought for a second, and it was really simple. 25 years of building a business or building businesses. And her response to me was like, good answer. And it's the truth. I mean, think about this. We're the sum of our experiences, we're the sum of our successes, and we're the sum of our failures. Sometimes I think what makes us so much, what really separates us out is we failed more times than other people. I mean, an interesting thing, I was at my 30th high school reunion, and yes, I know I'm dating myself. And at the same time, someone said to me, it looks like all you have is successes. And I said, interesting, because she's like, that's all you talk about. And I said, well, people don't really focus in on all the times that they failed, but I do things all the time that don't work out. I choose not to focus on what doesn't work out. I choose to focus in on doing more of what works out. And I think that's really when we look at how do we increase our value to the people who are looking, focus more on what's working and do more of what's working. The things that don't work, take a mental note, take a written note, document what's not working. So you don't you're not going to do more of what's not working, but you can make a little tweak to it. You can shift, you modify, you adjust. So that way you get more things working in your favor. I mean, it's sort of like the anatomy of $1 million launch is taking things that we know that work. And we do it. Now, along the way to the $1 million launch, guess what? We may take off and go really, really good. And then all of a sudden we go boom. And then we're like, oh my gosh. Well, if you panic right there, you're like, you're sunk. Well, you shouldn't panic because you've had some success. So we're like, okay, what's changed? Is our message changed? Has the market that we're targeting changed? Is a message getting old? Do we need to reshift it in another way? And these are all the questions that I think people need to ask all the time to increase their value.
Yeah. Well, it's funny if you mentioned that, and I'm going to piggyback on what you just said. I think it's paying attention to being mindful of the failures, but not spending a lot of time with them and on them. And I posed the question on my Facebook page over the weekend. I said, what are the folks that are doing $100,000 in revenue a month doing that others aren't? And I got tremendous amounts of response with that question. And one of the two biggest that stuck out to me, one of the two biggest responses that stuck out to me is, what aren't they doing? It's what they're not doing. It's what they're not focusing on is what's getting them to the 100K a month show.
Yeah.
And that was super powerful. And the other was straight focus. They were focused in on, and Brandon Powlin said this actually, and it really resonated with me. He said they focus on one business, one target audience, and they do it better than anyone else. And so the question that I have for the audience today is, what are you focusing on? What are you focusing on a daily basis? What are you doing? Are you doing revenue generating tasks, or are you just floundering in a whole bunch of $15 an hour work? You know, and those two things really, really stood out to me. It's what they're not doing and what are they focusing in on. And one of the gentlemen said, you know, I have multiple income streams coming in now. And, you know, I'm not quite at 100,000 a month, but I'm about 85,000. And they said that the difference is he's playing to win. He said he's playing to win. And there's a difference. And there's a difference between playing to win and playing not to lose. And I think a lot of people get trapped into playing not to lose because they're afraid. And listen, that fear of failure is okay, and it's normal, and all of us go through it, and constantly deal with it on a daily basis. But it's, how are you going to overcome that? What are you going to do? Who are you going to surround yourself with? Who are you going to hire? Who are you going to model? You know, that's going to help you get to the next level. And honest to God, I mean, that's what literally, I think, Dave, I can speak for David too. I think that's what got us to where we're at today, is getting around the right people, leveling up, not being afraid to fail, and not being afraid to spend money on our business and invest in it. Because when you invest in your business, I think you put more skin in the game and you get better result.
Yeah, the playing not to lose is key, because when all of a sudden something goes wrong and people freak out, and they're looking at all the things. Well, this isn't perfect. Hey, this person didn't get an email when they did this. Okay. I mean, seriously, I had someone who that they were focused on what emails people weren't getting versus saying, you know what, that's so minor in the scheme of things. Yeah. And you focus in on the big picture, making sure you have a good message. They didn't want to focus in on that people weren't opting in because the video that they had, so we have drive traffic, and they didn't want to worry about the people weren't opting in. They're like, well, the people who did opted in, that people didn't get this video. Okay, we can fix that. But if we're not getting a message to market match, that's another challenge that we have to look at. So majoring in the minors is what I would say is playing not to lose instead of playing the win. Roy Camerano says this all the time, positive expectancy. The top entrepreneurs, the top leaders have positive expectancy. They expect things to go right. Does that mean they go right all the time? No, they don't go right all the time. However, when you expect things to go right, the things that don't go wrong, you don't freak out over them. You don't get upset. You look at it as a learning opportunity. What do we need to modify? What do we need to adjust? What do we need to do to make sure things go in the same direction? I had a meeting this morning with a client that we just basically are wrapping up their first month's launch. They did no advertising, and they didn't even have a warm list. They had a cool list, because I call it a cool list because it's people over the last 2.5, 3 years that have emailed them or requested information about their podcast, and they didn't have a newsletter. They didn't email them. So it's a pretty darn cool list. And in their first test, where, you know, we're with no marketing outside of just the launch email sequences that went out, they did about $68,000.
Wow.
It's not bad, right? Yeah. So I said, guys, here's the good thing. Now the work begins. This was the low-hanging fruit. Although we came up with another cool couple ideas in regards to how to just do a couple more tests. We're going to do some voice drops and things like that for the people who didn't opt in. However, here's the cool thing. They're like, cool, what do we need to do? I mean, it's sort of like, it's like the entrepreneur that says, okay, what do we need to do? The positive expectancy. And I want to program that into everyone who's watching this. Look for the positive in things. Look for what can go right. Be willing to invest in yourself. Be willing to invest in your business. I mean, frankly, I mean, you mentioned you've invested in yourself. I'm invested. My wife freaks out over $180,000 over the past 5 to 7 years in myself, in my education, in mastermind, putting myself around the right people. And I can tell you that it's been the best investment that I've ever made, because who better to invest in than who? Yourself and your business.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Can't pay dividends. There's a problem there to begin with.
Right. And I think the biggest thing is I think people, and I put this on my, and I put this on my Instagram yesterday because it sizzled me last night. I was a bit fired up last night because, you know, I see these people out there that are calling themselves branding experts, and that's the industry I'm in. You know, I've been doing this 10 years. You know, I consider myself a pretty damn good brander and designer, and my work shows for it. And I document it day in and day out, and I show people the process. And then I see these other so-called brand experts, and their brands themselves, their business brands themselves, look like garbage. And I'm saying to myself, how can anyone call themselves a brand expert when they look amateur and low budget themselves? And it drives me absolutely up the wall. Like it makes me physically ill. And I physically felt my blood pressure rising when I was watching these people on Instagram talking this big talk. But then when you go to their Instagram page, it looks like hell. And I was like, what are these people doing? And it's funny because they're getting people's attention. And it truly takes away from the people that are honestly and actively and actually experts.
Well, I would say that they don't take away from people like you, Henry. I would say they take away from themselves, because anyone who's going to investigate them is going to make a decision who they are, what they're about, and do they resonate with that person no matter what. Yeah, and I think that really begs the question, how do you add value? How do you separate yourself? How do you, granted, there's always people who are going to say, hey, can you do for me? Here's the funniest thing that I have when people say, I've invested $50,000 in someone else and they didn't get results, so I only want to spend $2,000 now going forward on you. Just because you screwed up and chose the wrong person, I'm supposed to get penalized? Seriously? So the question is, how do you add value? And I think you bring up a really good point there in regards to it when you say, putting the best foot forward, number one. How do you frame how everyone sees you, a 360-degree view? It could be the Instagram, it could be the videos that you're putting out there, it could be your website, it could be anything that heck, anytime you put a marketing message out there, or any kind of message out there, it's framing people's impression of you. Right. And then I'd say, how do you give value? How do you serve people? What emails? I mean, one of the things that you're getting, I've got to give you credit on, is you're getting really, really good at how you communicate via email. They're funny, they're entertaining, it's almost like, it seems like it's written off the cuff on a daily basis on whatever hit your mind. And here's the thing. I know this is something that you wanted to work on. I know personally that you've invested in training from copywriting training so you could get good at it. And you've invested the time, you've invested the energy. So you invest in yourself, and guess what? You reap the rewards because you made that investment. The question,
it's the bottom line. It's the bottom line. So let's wrap this up, David. What is one of the biggest takeaways that somebody watching this today can actually get? Like, what is that right hook that you want them to catch?
Boom, right hook. Add value. Add value, add value, add value, add value. I mean, seriously, just continue to add value to the people who are engaging with you, and the right people will connect. The right people will engage.
Yeah. And my takeaway that I would like you to get is, don't be afraid to invest in yourself and in your business. And make sure that you invest in the right people. Make sure that you invest in people that are demonstrating their expertise, not just talking in theory. And that is what will help you make your decision on who it is that you hire, because you want to focus and stay in your lane. You want to focus on the things that you're super good at and delegate everything else out to the experts or to the people that actually love doing that stuff that does not come natural to you. So if you follow that, that's one of the biggest takeaways I've gotten from all the masterminds I've been in, all the people that are doing $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $30 million a year. They're all doing the same thing. That is the common denominator. So there you have it, guys. Another episode.
We will not be here next Monday because you will be overseas. You'll be in Paris. Have a great vacation, and we'll pick back up in 2 weeks.
Awesome. Take it easy, guys.
Thanks, guys.